sports animal, proud to be a Cumulus media station, even if they're not that proud of us. The following show is a paid commercial advertisement. The views expressed do not reflect those of this station, its ownership, or management. Live from downtown Albuquerque, this is First and 505 with Ryan Zamori.
Welcome back to First and 505. I'm Ed Nunez, subbing in for your normal Saturday host, Ryan Zamori. He just joined us in the last segment. And joining us in this segment, in this hour, is the assistant sports editor of the Albuquerque Journal, a good friend of mine, Steve Virgin, who he's been covering the Lobo football beat for about 4 years, I believe now, and he'll give us his opinion about where the Lobos may end up or where their prospects are for this season. Steve, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing good, Dad. How are you doing?
It's good to have you on. I really appreciate you coming on this morning. I know you've got some other things going on today, but Steve, you had an article in the paper the other day. The Mountain West preseason poll has picked New Mexico to finish last. I believe it's the fourth year in a row. Tell us, you were out in Las Vegas for Media Day. You covered the Lobos all season long. Give us your assessment about what do you think the keys are for this season for the Lobos to get out of that cellar dwelling? It's a preseason prediction, but give us a little bit of your assessment.
Well, I think the first thing is staying healthy. They've had some injuries, especially at the quarterback position, that's hurt them in the past. So the key is the offensive line. I'm going to learn a little bit more about the offensive line in the coming weeks. It's a brand new starting five, and I would say they're the key. Because I think Lobo fans and even the team is expecting the defense to keep on improving. It's really remarkable what the defense has done in the past couple years with Rocky Long as defensive coordinator, Danny Gonzales as head coach. Defense just keeps on improving, and if that continues to happen and the offense improves, we could see a turnaround here that teams have done. Utah State did it last year. Surprised a lot of people. Fresno State did it a couple years ago, or a few years ago. Just surprising everybody and, making the media look silly as far as making those picks, teams to finish last in the league.
Steve, talk about a little bit about the defense. A couple of years ago, when it was COVID, Rocky Long was only able to put in 60%, 40% of his defensive package, which, they've got to, there's a lot to take in, right? Coach Long runs a different system, and you really got to, you need time, right? You need time to prepare. He's run the system for a long time and very successful with it here at UNM and at San Diego State. How much is it, so you think that curve is the Lobo defense you mentioned, which is important? You mentioned the improvement. Talk a little bit about that. Everybody's concentrating on the offensive line, on the quarterback. Will it be Miles Kendrick or Isaiah Chavez, CJ Montez, or Justin Holiday? And I think you touched on it in your first opening about the defense. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, the defense, like I said, it's just fascinating to see the improvement each year. And, people have to realize they're just really bad, bottom of the nation, basically. And now they're ranked like in the top 60, and they just keep on moving up. The defense makes plays. Linebackers make plays. Ray Luatele is a kid from Orange County that's just keeps on improving as well, and he's a bit of a quiet leader. He took back a touchdown that showed his potential, and I think he's going to keep on fulfilling that this next season. They're getting Rico Hanna back as linebacker. He wears Brian Urlacher's number, and a lot is expected out of him. And they just got a lot of playmaking guys on defense that are going to, like I said, make plays and they could change the game. They know that. Jarek Reed was a guy that was in Las Vegas for media days, and a lot is expected out of him. He got all Mountain West Conference preseason pick, and just like last year. But he knows he has a lot to fulfill this year. He had a few chances last year that he could have made big plays and change games, change the season, and he realizes that he could do that this year. So it's kind of exciting to see because the defense is. That's kind of the character of the team. They get after the ball. They're making plays. They're very tough and mean, and it just characterizes the defense, and it kind of carries over to the offense as well. So I think it's going to be a situation where they keep on improving. might even get in the top 20, top 25 as far as defensive statistics. As far as the quarterback position goes, Danny mentioned that CJ Montez he has the advantage going into the summer, going to preseason camp because he knows the offense well. He showed, vast improvement during the spring. Just a different player making big plays, and he's matured a lot. He's getting more experience, and but I think it's going to be a pretty even battle between those four. You can't count out Isaiah Chavez. He's led the team to wins when he plays, and he keeps on improving. He's a kid that walked on and earned a scholarship. He's going to be in the mix. I'm excited to see the two transfers, Justin Holiday and Miles Kendrick from Kansas. Justin Holiday from Fresno City. I think Justin Holiday brings a lot to the table as far as running and passing. And I would say, I think he might be the surprise pick to win the job. But like I said, all of them bring something unique and strong to the table. And whoever wins that job, I think it's going to be a different story than last year as far as the offensive line goes, because they're going to have a lot more opportunities. And the biggest thing is that they might have more time to throw, more opportunities in the sense that they'll stay healthy, because this offensive line is a lot bigger than last year. It's just going to be a matter of them meshing and finding chemistry, that offensive line.
And that's the key, Steve. You mentioned the candidates you mentioned for quarterback. You make it sound like there's not that much separation. You wouldn't be surprised if any one of them got it then, right?
That's true. I wouldn't. It's that close. It's that close, and Danny wants to name a quarterback. Coach Gonzales wants to name a quarterback 2 weeks before the season, but he opened the possibility that it could carry on even further if the battles are close, and I wouldn't be surprised by that either.
Miles Kendrick, the transfer from Kansas, would it be a disappointment if he wasn't the starting quarterback? Do you think it's a disappointment to the program? You're bringing in the transfer for a reason, they right. So, do you think it would be a disappointment if he wasn't the starter?
I don't think it would be a disappointment. He's getting over an injury that he suffered last fall, and a lot of us don't know how serious it was. But from what I hear, he's healthy. He's ready to go. He wasn't ready to go during the spring, but you could tell that he could throw it around. He's able to run. He brings leadership because he's so experienced, and a lot of people compare him to Russell Wilson as far as his characterizations go, and he showed that leadership during the spring, but I don't think it would be a disappointment because we don't know so much about the injury, and that's the thing that might hinder him, but they say he's healthy. We'll see what happens.
CJ Montez, you mentioned, you wrote this. He's been Danny quoted Danny Gonzales, Coach Gonzales. He's been the healthiest, the longest, and he's been in the offense the longest. Him and Isaiah, but Isaiah missed some time. Close quote there from Coach Danny Gonzales.
Right.
And I got to say this, that CJ Montez went in last year, right? They started in one game, and he had quotes saying that we're going to beat this team by 30, 40. I can't remember exactly who they played. So he had a lot of growing up to do, right? He had a lot of growing up to do for sure as a freshman. And it sounds like that he's really come a long way as far as knowing the offense and taking that maturation to another level.
Yeah.
Right? Every freshman has room to grow. So
yeah.
It sounds like he's taking that step.
Yeah, he's a totally different kid, totally different player. He's learned a lot. That game against Colorado State, that was his first game since his junior year because he didn't play during COVID. It was expected that he was going to have rust, and starting as a freshman with an offensive line like that, it was very difficult for him, and I think he soon realized that. But I think by the end of the season, he showed his teammates that he was a different player already during that season. He's kind of picked it up during the spring, big time too. But last season against UNLV, he broke his hand early on. He didn't tell anybody. He stayed in the game, and he finished that game. It's kind of crazy that he did that, but kind of just shows the type of player he is and that he does want to contribute to this team. He got the reputation during high school that he was transferring a lot. Made a few transfers, but he's a really good kid, really good leader. Everybody likes him. He makes big plays. You know, he has a connection to Snoop Dogg because he played on his team,
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
and he brings a lot of that energy. You know, he gets people excited. Like I said, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if he won the job too, because just because he has that energy, that excitement. I mean, that a lot of young players do, like Luke Wysong. You know, he's a very young player that brings a lot of energy. That CJ brings the same type of energy.
Coach Gonzales called him a tough sucker.
Yeah, he is.
Quote there from your story on Thursday in the Albuquerque Journal. You know, Steve, we wanted to ask you too. Coach Gonzales' third year, right? First year, they're in COVID. It's tough. Second year, and this is his third year. What do you think? He sounds confident, right? I saw the interviews. You did some interviews in Las Vegas. What's your take on Coach Gonzales going into his third season? We're excited, right? He's one of us. We keep saying that. We love him here. We wanted to succeed and do well, right? What's your take on Coach Gonzales' confidence about his team? He said this. He said, we're going to be better. We're going to win some games. And what he said the other night on the interview, and I saw it, in a couple of years, we think we should be able to compete for a conference championship. What do you think? You covered it. You covered the Lobos. What do you think his confidence level is with his team going into his third season?
Yeah, confidence level is there for sure. You know, when he first took the job, Ed, you know, it was like we saw how bad the team was and how bad the program was, and as far as the future goes. But when he took the job, you know, he said he always bets on himself. You know, and it kind of goes with that theme in Vegas, but still, I mean, he took the job for that reason because he knew he believed himself. He believed that he could put a staff together. Rocky was a guy that he wanted all along to change the program, not just to surprise one year, but for the future, just to sustain it, kind of what they did in San Diego State. But the biggest challenge for him, especially because of COVID, has been recruiting, and I think it's just been amazing to see that whole staff, what they've been able to do as far as recruiting goes. I mean, they've been able to get some good players in town, from Arizona, from Texas, California, and in my opinion, I think that's the key to improving a college football team, college football program, is recruiting, and it's so hard to do in New Mexico as opposed to a place like San Diego State, where Danny and Rocky were able to get great players from California in that area and turn that program to where the point is, their consideration to go into a different conference. They're winning every season, and that's what they left there as far as that goes. But they want to build something like that here in New Mexico. And like I said, it's very tough, but I see it, objectively speaking, I see it turning around. Maybe not so much this season. It's going to be very tough, especially with their schedule. Tough conference, but I think in 2023, I think we could see a team that's contending, and I wouldn't be surprised by that.
We're going to ask one quick question. We're going to let you go after this. You mentioned the defense, reason for excitement. Back in the day, Coach Schlong had Brian Urlacher, Glover Quinn, Ian Clark, some playmakers on that defense. You think there's reason for that kind of excitement? I mean, again, Brian Urlacher is number one pick, Hall of Famer of the Chicago Bears. We're not, asking that on that level, but do you think there's that kind of, back in the day, right? They pack them in for the defense, right? The defense, the offense was kind of vanilla. They'd score, but it was the defense people came to watch. Do you think there's reason for that kind of optimism?
I do. I do. I mean, Rico Hanna is that type of player that can make big plays, and he's a fifth-year senior as far as getting that extra senior year, and I think an extra year because he got injured as well last year. And they have a lot of players on that defense that can make plays, and they respect Rocky so much, and they know his defense so much that if they just do what he says, they're going to make big plays. And they say that every interview, and it's true. We see it every game. And there's much, especially now. I mean, there's a lot of reason to be excited, especially when fall camp starts on August 5th. There's a lot of optimism, even though they've been picked last and they had such a rough year last year. They had a really good off season. They've like I said, they've done well with recruiting. They've done well in the weight room, and it's hard to argue with Danny that they're on the right path. It's just a really tough conference. It really is, and that schedule especially towards the end of the season, gets really really hard for them. But see what happens. I think that's what makes my job fun. I'm grateful for it as far as being able to cover a team like this, being able to cover a conference like this.
Actually, we can keep you on for a few more if you're okay with that. But
For sure.
the picks in the Mountain West Division, Boise State, they're a pick to come in first in their division, and in the Mountain Division, and then in the West Division, Fresno State's pick to come in first. Boise State followed by Air Force, Utah State, Colorado State, Wyoming, and New Mexico. You mentioned, again, I go back to that too about facilities-wise. New Mexico's catching up. But right now, Wyoming and Utah State and Colorado State right now, and it's just, frankly speaking here, Steve, they have better facilities than UNM does, right? Would you agree on that?
What was that? Which school?
They have better facilities overall, for recruiting, things like that. Their facilities are a little bit better than the University of New Mexico's.
Well, the teams in the conference, yeah, there's a few. There's quite a few. I mean, UNLV's been picked in the latter half of that conference, and I mean, that's a totally different program when you think about facilities. You get to play their home games in Allegiant Stadium. That's a big thing for recruiting in UNLV, and they got a young coach, very fiery. That program can turn around very quickly because of facilities. But I think New Mexico is getting improvements. They're going to have their new weight room, new performance center, right? And it's basically in the stadium, and it's exciting for when Danny describes what's going to become of that, as far as the players running out of that facility for home games. And it's tough. It really is tough when other programs get money, like a Colorado State, and get a new stadium improved. San Diego State has a new stadium. Like I said, those are just examples of how hard it is to recruit. The recruiting game is very difficult for New Mexico, but they are improving. Like I said, I mentioned that facility, and you get a name like Rocky Long. I mean, that's going to attract a lot of defensive players, even offensive players too, as far as the recruiting game goes, and that's a big reason why Danny wanted on his staff. One of the reasons.
Well, if you think about it, we mentioned this to Ryan Tamori in our last segment. Coach Gonzales' mentors at Arizona State, Herman Edwards, Marvin Lewis. How many years, Herman Edwards, a heck of a cornerback back in the day for the Philadelphia Eagles. People might forget that. I remember he was a good player, right? And a heck of a coach with Kansas City. Marvin Lewis coached how many years for the Cincinnati Bengals in the NFL. He also has Rocky Long as a mentor. So I don't know how Coach Gonzales has had some of the best mentors there is, I believe.
No, you're right. I mean, Arizona State's a place where Danny probably could have taken over as head coach eventually, head coach in waiting kind of thing. In the Pac-12, I mean, he's, like you said, he's had some really great mentors, and he touches on that a lot during the season and during his preparation for each game. And this is a moment that he's kind of been ready for, prepared for. Grew up as a kid, always wanted to be always a Lobo fan. So this is like his dream too. But he's going to rely on his players a lot. The season starts with 3 straight home games. I mean, I think that's their opportunity to start out hot. They get Boise State early. They get to show what they can do against a team like that, a top team in the conference. And like I was saying, the schedule gets really tough later in the season, so it's very important for them to start early, and they know that. I think they have a quiet confidence about them, the players. They believe bowl game is expectation. That's how. I mean, they're quietly believing that. And it's crazy to think because they are picked last and they had such a rough season, but they're talking championship already. But I think reality of it is they have the opportunity to win 6 games. I mean, they'll be in the mix, I think, if they start out hot.
I think that's I think that's quite confidence. You mentioned Coach Gonzales isn't going to show us, play his cards. He's pretty much keeps it close, to the best. He's not a cocky, arrogant guy.
No,
but I got to hear what you're saying. I think the prospects are definitely are better for the University of New Mexico football team than they've been maybe in a couple seasons. Maybe they're starting to recover and get there, and we all hope that they'll eventually be in a bowl game for sure. Steve Burgeon, assistant sports editor or the Albuquerque Journal. I'll tell you what, and a very good friend of mine, it's always good to have you on, Steve, whether it be on Proview Networks or whatever other venue we have talked on. It's always good to talk Lobo football with you. We sure appreciate you joining us.
Same here, Ed. Appreciate it, man. Ryan's lucky to have you fill in for him.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Steve. We'll talk to you soon. Show is first. The show.
Thank you so much, Steve. We appreciate you.
All right, thanks.